Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. You may be wondering what I'm doing. I'm getting an early start on my Christmas gifts by celebrating Christmas early. I'm going to be working on a fun Carpenter star pattern that helps get me in the Christmas spirit. So I have a fun little gift to myself, a bundle of fabric that I get to make into an easy quilt. And we know I love opening the bundles. This is a Lily & Loom fabric collection. It's called Daisy Delights. I'm sure you can see why. I'm a sucker for the fun pink and the floral. I'm not always into flowers, but man, these are just too cute. Those cute little flower polka dots. Who doesn't love a polka dot? And the pops of color are just gonna look beautiful in this quilt, and I cannot wait to get to the free motion quilting. We know that's my favorite part. I don't know exactly who's gonna receive this quilt, but I know it'll be a gift for somebody, whoever's nicest to me through the year. I'll have to make a list and check it twice. Oh, it's mom humor, you know, what can I say? Okay, well, I've seen all the beautiful fabrics in this bundle. It's time to start cutting. So I know it looks like I'm a little crazy by celebrating Christmas early, but I want to get started on these projects, so I'm getting myself all in the mood. I've cranked down the AC so it's nice and cold in here, and I think it'd be fun if we played a Christmas game. I'm going to make several Christmas movie references throughout the episode, and you have to call out the movies in the comment box. And whoever can name them all doesn't really win anything, but it'd still be fun. And I can promise that you won't be saying, bah humbug, by the time you see the end of this episode. So let's get started. First thing I have to do for the Carpenter Star quilt is start cutting my half square triangles. So I'm going to cut this into squares, then I'm going to cut those diagonally. I'm actually cutting several layers of fabric here because I want to try to get this done quickly. I've got a new rotary cutter blade which is going to slice through it like butter, and every time you have a clean cut, an angel gets its wings. So this quilt is basically made up of half square triangles, and I'm going to do the half square triangles the way the pattern calls for it to be done, and that starts with taking our squares and cutting them in half. Seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. And since I want to get this done tonight, I'm going to cut through several of these at a time. Now make sure, I'm talking to myself here, that they're nice and even because I don't want to have wonky triangles. That's not a Christmas movie reference, just so you know. Kind of looks like a Christmas tree. You know what else reminds me of Christmas trees? Santa Claus. I know him! So here are some of the half square triangles that I'll be sewing together. I just need to do the same with my snowy white squares, and these are going to work as the background. I cut up a few more of those and then put them together. So I have my triangles cut out, and I'm going to start sewing them together, one color with the background. And I do know there's several different ways to make half square triangles, but we really only need combinations of one or two of these at a time, so it makes more sense to sew them one at a time. And I'm going to go ahead and use my pins just to kind of hold it in place. I mean, you have to be careful with them or you could put your eye out. So not only do I need half square triangles with print and solid fabric, I need some that are two prints as well. So I'm going to go ahead and whip those up pretty quick. So this first row has a lot of background and not quite a lot of prints, but it's not such a bad row. It's not a bad row at all, really. Maybe it just needs a little bit of love. And all I have to do is sew it together. First row is done. Second row is already pieced and ready. I just need to sew them together. So I finished putting together the center of my quilt and a little popcorn necklace. And what I love about this free pattern is that it's so easy to put together because all you have to do is match the prints together. And I love how those half square triangles come together to make diamonds. Am I easily amused? Definitely, but hey, it works for me. Another thing that really helps make these points come together is nesting the seams. And that's just a term that means ironing the seams away from each other so that when I put them together, they fit together nicely and give me those perfectly pieced points. Because if the points don't match, we all know that can be a ah moment. Now let's see what those borders look like. So the first border is just a nice, thin, solid border. And what this is gonna do is put a little space between the points here and the pieced border that I'm gonna put on next. And this green, you can kind of think of it like trimming the Christmas tree. Then after this border, it gets a pieced border that's really gonna show off the fun prints in this fabric collection. And this is really easy to make because it's just rectangle strips cut out and sewn together along the long side with my nice big square at the corners. Now I just laid the fabric rectangles out in a scrappy order. You could play around with the fabric placement and make it more regular or go from one color to the other, but I needed to get this done. So I'm gonna get the borders sewn on, make it into a quilt sandwich with my backing and some batting, get it machine quilted, and then I have a fun show and tell segment that I can't wait to show you. Since this quilt has a lot of bright floral prints, I thought we would continue that theme with the quilting. So what I've done in the background here is quilt a nice all-over flower design. Now I went with a slightly light pink thread because I knew that the all-over texture wouldn't highlight an individual flower, it would just all blend in together and really kind of highlight the beautiful colors in the fabric. So what I've done is started by quilting a swirl, a small little curl, from which I start adding petals, working my way around the outside of that. Once I get to the end of that row, I'm gonna just curve right back up and do another row of those petals, continuing on. Then when I'm ready to add another flower, I'm just gonna add another little swirl that branches out and continue the steps over and over again. Now I'm trying to make sure the area is filled in as much as possible. I think people are gonna notice a hole in the quilting before they notice an error. And remember, as long as it's all quilted, it's gonna look great. If you want to see this design in a little bit more detail, you can check out the free quilting diagrams that I drew up for you. The information and how to download them is in the description box below. Now, since the fabric is so bold and bright, whatever I quilt in these blocks isn't really going to show up, and that makes it a great place to practice designs that don't feel quite as familiar. Now, what I'm working with here is a fun diagonal echo and some serpentine lines. And what I've done is, starting from one point of the diamond, I'm quilting a diagonal line that echoes inside of the block, returning to the starting point. Then from that point, I'm gonna fill in that space that I've just created with a serpentine line. It's a line that's gonna curve up along that diagonal line, curve out, and into the other side. So basically it's going back and forth between those diagonal lines, and it's an elongated kind of S shape, but ultimately whatever shape you quilt here will be fine. Now what I love about that diagonal echo that I started with is a nice contrast with the curvy serpentine line. But basically I'm gonna fill in that shape, working my way all the way to the opposite side of that diamond, filling it in with a serpentine line. Now once I get to the background fabric that's towards the center of the quilt, I want to use that to really highlight the beautiful star that is made up with the piecing. So what I've done is quilt a feather type motif. Now don't let that scare you, it's actually not that hard, but it's just something that's a little bit more self-contained, something that shows off the shape a little bit more and not quite an all over texture. And what I've done is, starting from one corner of the square, I'm quilting a kind of curve, looks almost like a question mark. It's going to go out and curve towards the center, trying to keep that as centered as I can in the square. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now from that point, I'm going to work my way back along the spine that I've just quilted, quilting this petal kind of shape, and it's almost like a half heart. It's going to curve out and kind of scoot back into that spine. Now when I'm trying to fit a round kind of feather into a square block, it's not going to fit perfectly, but that's okay. As I get to the corners of my block, I'm just going to make my petals of my feather just a little bit bigger. And as I run out of room towards the top, I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller. The most important thing isn't that all these petals are the same size, it's that that whole block gets filled in completely. And again, if you want, you can download those free quilting diagrams where you can draw those over again and again and kind of get the idea of the way it goes together. Because once it clicks in your mind, it is really fast to quilt. So I'm excited to show you just how ahead I am with all the Christmas projects I finished up to give away as Christmas gifts. There's nothing that makes me feel better than finishing a deadline early. Okay, all right. So these are Christmas projects I started for last Christmas and didn't finish in time. But hey, I'm either really late or really early, and I think I'm gonna go with really early. So one quilt that's finally off my UFO list, you know, my unfinished objects, is this cute boat quilt, and I think I have the perfect nephew in mind who might get it. And you've heard the saying, right? 'Tis better to give than receive. Well, I've got this very special thread collection for somebody that's near and dear to my heart. Somebody that loves machine quilting and beautiful thread. I can't wait to see her face when she gets it. And then of course this adorable bag that's gonna carry all sorts of goodies. Can't decide who I'm gonna give this to either. Maybe my mom or my mother-in-law. Whoever watches my kids the most for me. Just kidding. And since I'm in such a giving mood, there is a giant giveaway with some of my favorite things. So be sure to check out the details about that in the description box. You might be just one of the lucky ones that gets to celebrate Christmas early as well. And if you don't win, don't worry. There's a great feature of all the projects in this episode so that you can see the presents that you want to make for those loved ones in your life. And last but not least is the quilt from tonight. This free and easy quilt pattern shows how great half square triangles can look when combined with bright, bold fabrics, a nice solid background for your quilting to shine, and lots of fun. So don't be a cotton-headed ninny muggins. And be sure to subscribe to the Midnight Quilt Show so that you never miss an episode. And I'd love to see your comments below on what Christmas projects you're wrapping up in time. See you next week, and in the meantime, make sure to buy yourself something real nice.